at a certain level, we are hardwired to construct an identity and construct an ego for ourselves. And then, we oftentimes spend the rest of our lives just trying to defend that ego and defend that identity, even if it's not necessarily serving our higher purpose or serving what we really want. So I think the ability to look at yourself, figure out what subconscious patterns you're running that are not serving you, are hidden under the hood, so to speak, and then being able to look at that and say, that part of me needs to die. And it might be painful. I might be confused. I might sort of be jumping into the unknown and not knowing who I am, anymore. But that's a really integral part of making any sort of personal change. What's up, fam? Welcome back to another episode of ShiShi Meditations. And in today's video, I want to talk about something that's really been on my mind and a topic I've been exploring. And I kind of want to lay out a little bit of a theory that I have for you guys and see if it helps you in the way that it's been helping me. So for those of you that follow me on Instagram or Twitter, recently I tweeted a concept that came to me, and it was essentially, the tweet was how to change in 4 steps. And step 1 is know yourself. Step 2 is remove yourself. Step 3 is expand yourself. And step 4 is become yourself. And, at first glance, that kind of sounds like, well, what does that mean? But this is a concept that, I've been exploring a little bit, and for the sake of Twitter, I wanted to make it kind of like snazzy and consistent, but I want to use this video to further dive into what I mean by that 4-step process and how I believe it works and how I think it's helped me. So basically, the first step to any sort of personal change, and when I talk about change here, I mean like deep-rooted changes to subconscious patterns of thought and emotions and behaviors that have essentially been hardwired into us, and we've come to essentially accept as our personality. When somebody says, "Oh, I'm not a confident person," or "I'm a shy person," and the way that they use the language to describe themselves is as if that's a genetic trait that they were born with, that they're stuck with, that they can't change. And there is some degree of truth to that. I mean, there are certain genetic predispositions that we all have, certainly physical predispositions, but I think we have the power to change a lot more about ourselves than we give ourselves credit for, or that we might even be aware of. And so I think the first step, if there's something in your personality that you really want to change, and it's something that's a deep-rooted pattern in the way that you relate to yourself or to others, or to certain situations in your life, I think the first step is awareness, is just becoming aware of the actual issue or situation and being able to look at it as objectively as you can and being honest with yourself about, okay, this is how I react to this certain energy in my life or this certain person in my life. So that's kind of the first bucket of know yourself. It's a very common quote throughout history, to know yourself. And I think for me, that just means self-awareness. How much can we just sit with ourselves and become aware of our subconscious patterns and reactions to different things in our lives? And meditation, or any sort of introspective practice, journaling, for example, is another one. There's tons of tools for this, but those are all great ways to do that. The second step in this process, in my opinion, is to remove yourself. And when I say remove yourself, I mean have the courage to essentially face the fact that if you're going to change, there are parts of who you think you are that need to die. And that can be a very terrifying prospect for, a lot of people, myself included, because at a certain level, we are hardwired to construct an identity and construct an ego for ourselves. And then, we oftentimes spend the rest of our lives just trying to defend that ego and defend that identity, even if it's not necessarily serving our higher purpose or serving what we really want. So I think the ability to look at yourself, figure out what subconscious patterns you're running that are not serving you, are hidden under the hood, so to speak, and then being able to look at that and say, that part of me needs to die. And it might be painful. I might be confused. I might sort of be jumping into the unknown and not knowing who I am, anymore. But that's a really integral part of making any sort of personal change. And, like I said, this can be a very scary process, because a really cool question to ask yourself is, who would you be without your problems? Like, what if you just woke up one day and all your problems are gone? That actually is, surprisingly might feel pretty uncomfortable, because a lot of us tend to latch on to our problems or our ways that we victimize ourselves, or our issues that we have going on in our lives, because they give our lives a sense of meaning. They give our lives a sense of purpose, and that helps to fortify our identity and our personality and our ego. And if all of those problems went away, who would we be? And, at first thought, that question might have an obvious answer of, well, yeah, of course I wouldn't want to have any of my problems. But I think there is an existential purpose to having problems. That is something that's quite important for us to grapple with. So that second step is to remove yourself. It's essentially to say, okay, whoever I think I am, this set of behaviors and attitudes and perceptions and beliefs and thoughts and emotions and actions and habits, those are just a product of my past, but they don't fully define who I am. And what I am is the space, the possibility to be those things and to be other things. And that's really what change is all about. It's figuring out what else you can be, as opposed to what you have been in the past. So I think, once you can first know yourself and then remove yourself, it's kind of like, first you need to know who you are. You need to know that you are somebody, and who is that somebody? Then you kind of need to become nobody. You need to be able to say, all right, let me shed all of those things, good or bad, and just become this space, essentially, that is full of opportunity and potential, so that I can then make more conscious decisions about who I want to be. Then the next step is to expand yourself. And, once you can remove yourself and become nobody, then the next step is to think about it in the sense of, all right, well, what are the behaviors and actions, the new things that are maybe a little bit outside of my comfort zone? So for example, if I'm a shy person, or that's how I've classified or categorized myself, then that might mean going out and meeting 5 new people a day, and doing something relatively drastic like that, which is really pushes you outside of your comfort zone, but is helping you become the kind of person who no longer looks at yourself as shy. And this is something that I personally went through. I grew up for most of my life feeling really shy and being super socially awkward. And I still have, I think I have a predisposition to being introverted still. And I think that's just something that will always be there. But I'm a lot more comfortable with myself socially now, because I actively, first I chose not to believe that that's all I could be, as this shy, introverted kid. But I also actively took the efforts to push myself socially and put myself in situations where I would have to deal with social pressure, and then come out on the other side of that and basically be like, I'm still here. I'm alive. Yeah, maybe that was a little scary or tense, but it wasn't as bad as I thought. It wasn't death, which is what your ego oftentimes wants you to believe with these kinds of things, certainly with social anxiety. So that's the next step. Expand yourself. Instead of, a common piece of advice is just be yourself. And I think in some ways that's good advice, but in other ways it's not, because if you're trying to change, then just be yourself means nothing new happens. And then, you're not going to be able to change. I think a better piece of advice is try to figure out who else you can be. And that's what this third step of expanding yourself is all about. And, finally, the fourth step, these first 3 steps of first, know yourself, know what your patterns are. Second, empty all of that out, give yourself an open blank slate, a new fresh canvas to paint the personality of who you want to grow onto. And then the third step is expand, which is take the actions to then become that person and accept that it's going to be a little uncomfortable. If you can do all those 3 things, then it will naturally lead you into the fourth step, which is become yourself, become the new version of yourself that you very consciously have created and envisioned. And I think that 4-step process is a really practical way, practical but not easy, simple but not without difficulty, to change even some of the most subconscious, deeply rooted parts about yourself that you might not think you were able to change. And so, you know, in terms of the how-to of this, this has all been very theoretical, but I think knowing yourself, that's any sort of introspective practice. So like I mentioned, meditation, journaling, you know, therapy, although I will caveat that by saying you don't want to just only do therapy for the rest of your life, because then you kind of get stuck in the know yourself phase and you don't actually take action to create any sort of new reality for yourself. You know, the second step of emptying yourself is also a form of meditation in a sense, to be able to, once you know what your flaws are, just sit with them and realize that they don't define you. And you know, that's a form of meditation in and of itself. Then the third step is all about taking action. That's where you consciously say, all right, what are the things I can do to start taking on the behaviors of the kind of person that I want to be? You know, what, if I was that person already, how would I live? How would I wake up in the morning? What actions would I take? How would I talk to people? How would I treat people? How would I treat myself? What beliefs would I have? What thoughts would I have? What emotions would I be feeling in different situations? And, you know, that's the uncomfortable part a little bit. And then there's a little bit of like fake it till you make it. But you're essentially tricking yourself into becoming that person until those habits get equally or more solidified as the old destructive habits that you had. And then before you know it, one day you wake up and you just are that person. And then once you've done that, you're at step 4, which is becoming yourself. And I would also just end this by saying, I don't believe this is a static process. You know, I think we're always constantly doing this in different areas of our life. So it's not like you just do this once and then like you turn 35 and you're just like, I'm like the completely penultimate version of myself. I am just like a totally actualized man or woman, and there's nothing to achieve now. Like, you know, it's a lifelong growing process. But this is something, as, you know, a 29-year-old now, I'm starting to figure out and look back over the cycles of my life to see how this has played out. And I think it can be really helpful for us all to just take stock of where we are in this process in various areas in our life, and just make sure that we're, you know, we're moving forward along that path of know yourself, remove who you think you are, expand yourself into who you want to be, and that will allow you to become the yourself that you want to be. So I hope this video was helpful. Like I said, something I've been thinking about, and let me know what you guys think in the comments below, and I will talk to you guys soon. Peace.